Okay, right. Okay, Parshas Ki Seitzei. So, a few offerings on the sheet tonight. The first one is goes to the very beginning of our Parsha. The Parsha begins Ki Seitzei la milchama al oivecha. We're again talking about war. Now, it's very interesting because this is a theme that has continued from last week's Parsha. In Parsha Shoftim, there were many aspects of war that were discussed. The Pasuk says in last week's Sedra, Ki Seitzei la milchama al oivecha. And it talks about the Mashuach Milchama, when you get close to war, v'nigash hakohen v'diber el ha'am. And the kohen, known as the Mashuach Milchama, is anointed for this purpose, to give the big talk before they go to battle, and he goes and speaks to the people. And he speaks to them and he tells them various halachas. Now, so you see that this week's Parsha begins with a continuation of the theme of last week's Parsha, which is war. All aspects of war. Number one, the Mashuach Milchama speaking and giving the prep talk, telling certain people they can go home, etc. You have Hashchosa Silonis. The Pasuk says, you can't destroy a fruit tree, which is the famous halach of not destroying fruit trees in last week's Sedra. That's talking about battle. When you go into battle, don't just randomly, unnecessarily destroy fruit trees. And then, strangely, in the middle of last week's Parsha, in the middle of this topic of war, you have the Egla Rufa. Egla Rufa means it's seemingly not connected to war. You have an unidentified person who's been killed, and there's a whole procedure. You've got to measure the nearest town, and the Rabbonim of that town have got to come along and make sure there's a proper burial, and they take responsibility for it. And now that's the Parsha of Egla Rufa. And then this week's Parsha, Ki Seitzei la milchama al oivecha. The question is, three questions. Question number one, what is Egla Rufa in last week's Parsha? Why is it placed in the middle of the various topics about war? So you've got the Mashuach Milchama talking about the prep talk, the big speech before they go to battle. You've got destroying the fruit trees in war. And then you've got Egla Rufa, seemingly nothing to do with battle. And then you've got this week's Parsha, Ki Seitzei la milchama al oivecha. That's question number one. What does Egla Rufa got to do with anything? Number two, also in last week's Parsha, the Mashuach Milchama, he sets out two exceptions. One exception is anyone who is scared. The Pasuk says, V'hoi ki korvech al milchama, he says, V'nigash hakohen v'diber el ha'am, al yerech levavchem al tiru, and they can go home. Someone who is too scared, who is nervous, can go home. The next set of exceptions, the famous three. Number one, the person who just got married, the person who built a new home, and the person who built a vineyard. The Pasuk says, Mi ho'esha shebona bayis chodosh, v'lo chanoche lo yelech v'yeshiv lebeisa. He should go home. Mi ho'esha shenota kerem, person who built a vineyard, he should go home. Or mi ho'esha she'iras isha, someone who just got engaged, just got married. Again, yelech v'yeshiv lebeisa. Fine. Two questions on this. Question number one, I'm always worried about that. I'm always troubled by it. The Mashuach Milchama is standing up. He's giving this big speech. And he's telling people, these people who is someone who is too timid and scared, they can go home. And people who have just got married, planted a vineyard, or built a house, they can also go home. But why schlep them there in the first place? Why didn't you just tell them in advance that those people who just got married, built a vineyard, built a house, don't need to come to the battleground? Why bring them there to make the speech and then send them home again? You know, you can just send them an email, write a letter to them, tell them they're exempted, end of story. And a further question is, they seem quite strange exceptions. You know, I can understand the first category, someone who is scared and timid, they're a liability in battle. But someone who just got married, planted a vineyard, built a house, it seems, try getting off jury service nowadays and say that I can't come because I've just built a vineyard. It's not going to work. So what exactly is this about? So I came across, I forget where I heard it, but I came across the following answer. When the Torah is discussing battle, the Torah wants to remind us that battle has lots of repercussions, many of them very negative. There's death, there's pain, there's injury. But a key problem with battle is we lose the value of human life. It becomes sort of debased in our eyes. That's the reality. I mean, at the moment, 6 months ago, whenever it was, when the Ukraine war began, everyone, I think we all felt much more strongly about it. But now there's what's called war fatigue. That I heard recently that you can't put it on the news too much because people don't want to hear about it. In other words, we become so, as it were, bored, fatigued with it, we don't want to hear too much. We hear tragically of more deaths and injuries. We become a little bit desensitized to it. So it happens today in the 21st century. So the problem with war is that we lose sensitivity to human life. With that sort of concern, the Torah is telling us the following. I want the Mashuach Milchama to go out and to tell the people, to give them the speech, that sometimes, sadly, war is a necessary evil in life. That sometimes you have to actually do battle. But I don't want you to lose sight of human life, of the importance of what life is all about. Don't think it's normal. And therefore the Mashuach Milchama stands up and he gives a pep talk. He gives a pep talk saying the importance of being courageous and doing this unnecessary, this necessary evil. But he brings all the people there to make sure that he makes the speech and he says, those people who've just got married, who've just built a house, just built a vineyard, you can go home. Why did he make them schlep them there and not just tell them at the outset, don't bother coming? Because he wants to give a message, not for them, but for the people who are staying in battle. The message is life is actually about building families, homes, working Hashem's land. So the message is not for those people, but it's the message for the people who are staying in battle. And that's why you have Egla Rufa as well. Egla Rufa, this Nebuch, this corpse that is no one knows who he is. So we're telling the people in the Parsha of Milchama, the Torah then discusses Egla Rufa, because we want you to know that even an unidentified corpse, we're going to take care of it. Because the value of human life is so important that this is a devastation. There's an unidentified corpse. We're going to make sure, we're going to find out, we're going to measure up, the nearest town is going to take responsibility, the Rabbonim have got to get involved. I'll tell you something fascinating. I heard this morning, Rabbi Meyer came to school, he said something very, very interesting. Kahuna is hereditary. Yeah, if a person is a Kohen, his son's a Kohen, that's how it works. The exception is the Mashuach Milchama. He's a Kohen. He's anointed for this purpose. But the son of the Kohen Mashuach isn't necessarily a Mashuach Milchama. It's not a hereditary position. With other positions of Kahuna, it's all hereditary, but not the Mashuach Milchama. Why not? Why isn't it hereditary? Why isn't the son of the Mashuach Milchama, who's anointed to give the speeches before war, his son should do the same job? Kahuna is hereditary. The answer is, when you go to the Beis HaMikdash, and the Kohen is working and serving in the Beis HaMikdash, our hopes, our dreams are that my children will take over my position. We want him to also serve in the Beis HaMikdash. But we don't want the son of the Mashuach Milchama. My hopes and dreams are not that he's going to stand up in battle and make the speech. We don't want him to make any speeches. We don't want there to be battles. We prefer a world without war. And therefore, the position of the Mashuach Milchama is not hereditary. And therefore, we can answer our three questions. What's the connection between Egla Rufa and war? Because Egla Rufa is teaching me that life is important. And don't, be flippant even about an unidentified corpse. Why make them come out and send them home? Because I want to give chizuk for the people and a reminder for the people who are there, who are going into battle, that life is actually, we value building over destroying. Like I said, we value people and all their contributions, even though we recognize the sad and occasional need for war. And that's why these three exceptions, which all represent some sort of building and contributing to society, that's why we're giving reminder of the time of the value of human life. Okay, now let's press on. We then have in this week's Parsha the Ben Sora Omora, a very difficult Parsha. The Ben Sora Omora, the wayward rebellious son. Rashi says, the Ben Sora Omora, says Rashi, it's on the first box in paragraph 2, or Ben Sora Omora Nerag al Shem Soifai. He's killed because of the end, that is the trajectory that he's sort of heading towards. Higia Torah l'soif daito, the Torah ascertains where this fellow is heading. Soif shemachale mamon oviv, he'll end up dissipating his parents' money, and he needs his quotient, his portion, his quota of meat and wine, and he can't sustain it. He can't fund his addictive habit. And he'll stand on the highway, and he'll steal. That's the Ben Sora Umura. Very strange Parsha, according to one opinion in the Gemara. It never happened. It's just there to teach us, to expound on educational themes. But Rashi says, what is the whole concept of the Ben Sora Umura? Higia Tur L'Soif Daitoi. We look at him not at now, but what's going to be in the future. And better he dies innocent than guilty at this stage. That's what the Ben Sora Umura is. The difficulty that many Mefarshim grapple with is in a few weeks' time it's Rosh Hashanah, and we learn about Yishmael. And we take exactly the opposite assessment of Yishmael. Take a look, bottom box. Vayishmael ukimes kol hanar. Do you remember the beginning in Parshas, I think it's in Parshas Vayera, HaKadosh Baruch Hu listens to the voice of Yishmael. Vayikra malach elokim el hanar el Hagar, so min hashamayim, and HaKadosh Baruch Hu the malach calls out to Hagar from the heavens, Vayomer lo malach Hagar, what's up? Al tiri, don't be scared. Ki shom elokim el kol hanar b'asher hu shom. HaKadosh Baruch Hu has heard the voice of Yishmael, b'asher hu shom. What does that mean? Says Rashi, b'asher hu shom, lefi maisim shu oiseh achshav hu nitne. He is being judged on his current level, v'lo lefi mashu osid lasos, and not what's going to be with him. Lefi shehoy malochi asharis mekatrigim v'omrim, because the malachim in Shemayim were saying, why are you saving Yishmael? This fellow is going to cause havoc to the Jewish people. He's going to kill your children, the Bnei Yisrael, in the future. You're now going to try and save him? And HaKadosh Baruch Hu responds, Achshav Mahu, right now. What is he? Tzaddik or Rasha? Tzaddik, right now he's a tzaddik. We're judging him according to his current status and not what is going to be. So what's going on? When it comes to the Ben Sora Umura, we judge him based on the future, not now. And when it comes to Yishmael, it's B'asher hu shom. What's the difference? So there's different answers. One year I think we gave an answer of this Marsha. The Marsha in Rosh Hashanah Tezayin on Beis, the top of the next page, it says, Ben Sora Mer Nidan Hashem Sofo, Ayin Tzirutza, he quotes the Mizrahi, V'oid yesh leima de Ben Sora Nidan Hashem Sofo shel atzmo, ma she'en kein b'Yishmael al Shem Sofo shel bonov lo nidan. In other words, the difference is this. The Ben Sora Umura, I'm judging him on his future. Give it a year, 5 years, 10 years, 20 years, he is going to be in big trouble. But when it comes to Yishmael, it's not him, it's his descendants. That's very different. That's an answer I think we gave him, and that's why, by the way, it's very meduik in the pasuk. It's B'asher hu shom. It's where he is. Good. I came across a different answer this year in the name of Yisrael Salanta. Let's take a look at this beautiful piece. I saw this in a lovely sefer called the Sitcha Elyon, and he quotes this, and this is the extract from the Gilyon called Kol Torah. The truth is, we only judge a person on where he is right now. So not at what he's going to be in the future. When is this true? So long as the conditions that he finds himself in now are not going to facilitate or force a future position. A Ben Sora Umura is a young, impetuous young man. He's already stealing. And he's drinking gluttonously. His current actions, he is living in a world where his whole life, his whole technical setup, his current circumstances are pushing him in this trajectory. It's not a question of the future, it's a question of now. His current life is just pushing him this way. שכבר השחיס דרכה על הארץ, והוא נידן באיס השער, שהם סופר שעומד מעכשיו לא ולך הזמן. His current way of living is just pushing him in this way. So he's currently involved in all these actions. And therefore, לפי זה, יש להספיין הרבה. A person has really got to think about this. שאדם עומד בראש השנה ויום הכיפורים. A person stands Rosh Hashanah Yom Kippur. ובוטח בעצמו שיוצא זכאי בדינוי. And a person is confident about himself that he's going to emerge victorious in din. Mitam b'asher Hashem, because right now, I'm davening in shul on Rosh Hashanah. I'm in a good place. But according to this principle of Yisrael Salant, a person has got to really think very carefully. Is there anything within me right now because my life circumstances or my midas are such that could lead me in a way which could cause some sort of destruction, midas or situations that are right now causing me to do things which I shouldn't be doing. So Basher Husham is not quite true. I'll give you an example. Yeah, my wife always calls it technical setup. Yeah, I'll give you an example. You have a young man who's addicted to his phone. So whatever that could lead to. So it could be Chil Shabbos problems, it could be seeing inappropriate sites, whatever it may be. So the technical setup is that if he has no safeguards in his house, where the parents crazily would allow him to take this phone and use the phone without filters or unrestricted, or allows him, they hand phones in the evening after, 10 o'clock or whatever the time is. So the kid's going to take the phone to the room. It's going to be next to his bed on Shabbos, and it's going to be flashing and beeping and who knows what. Then the temptation is so much stronger. The technical setup has failed. If before Shabbos or before he goes to bed, he leaves the phone downstairs or whatever, that's the rule in the house, then the technical setup is saving him from doing things we shouldn't be doing. And therefore, Basher Husham, right now he's not doing anything. But if the technical setup is there, that it's going to lead to it, then that's considered a negative Basher Husham. The whole setup is setting him up for failure. That's what it means. So the difference is, what is the Basher Husham? The Ben Sora Umora, he's right now involved in a lifestyle which is leading him down this way. The current lifestyle is the problem. The gluttonous drinking and the eating and everything else, which is leading him down this way. It's a current technical setup which is problematic. The Basher Husham is the problem, as opposed to Yishmael, because right then it was clear that the Basher Husham, right at that moment, he was innocent. That's the difference, which is a very important concept to think about, especially as we approach Rosh Hashanah. Let's time for one quick final idea. This I saw in the writings of Rabbi Frand in his Parsha Vot. He says a beautiful idea. In the Parsha, like I said, there are many mitzvahs. One of them is Lo yechli geva al isha. A woman can't wear men's clothes. Lo yilbash geva simlas isha. A man can't wear women's clothes. Beged isha. Ki savas Hashem lekecha kol oisa eila. Okay, a well-known halacha from this week's Parsha. Sefer Shoftim. We come across the case of Yael. Yeah, the case of where Yael kills Sisera. The pasuk says in Shoftim, when we're in the famous Shiras Tavoirah, Tavoirach minoshim Yael, that Yael is blessed more than all the other women. I think the Medrash says it's talking about the Yemohes. Eishes chever hakeni minoshim bo'el Tavoirach. Okay, she's praised very extensively. Says the pasuk a little bit later, Perek Hey pasuk Chaf Vav in Sefer Shoftim, Yoda liyoseit tishlachna. She took the tent peg of the tent. Sisera was the general of Canaan, and he was fighting against the Jewish people. His enemy had lost. Barak, who was the leader of, or the general of Klal Yisrael, under Devorah, the prophetess, he was victorious over Canaan, and Sisera escaped. And he ran away. And Yael saw him run away. She brought him into his tent. She gave him drink and milk and whatever. He fell into a deep sleep. And says the pasuk, Yod liyosei tishlachna. She took the tent peg, etc. And she basically drove it into his head and killed him. End of that famous episode with Yael and Sisera. Says the Yalkut Shimoni, the Medrash, unbelievable Yalkut. That which we say in Eishes Chaya on Friday night, the last chapter in Mishlei, Yoda Shilcha Bakisher, that her hand, the Eishes Chaya, the woman of valor, her hand holds on to the kisher. The kisher is what's called a spindle. It's a piece of wood which a woman uses for weaving. What is that referring to? Says the Medrash, Zu Yael. It's referring to Yael, famous Yael. Shelo hargoso b'klizayin ele b'yesed. That when she killed Sisera, she didn't use a sword. She used a yesed, a tent peg. Tichsiv yodo leyesed tishlachno, which is the pasuk I just read. Asked the Medrash, why didn't she use a sword? Sisera is lying there. He's got his gun, he's got his sword, he's got ammunition with him. Wouldn't it be easier just to take out his sword and kill him there and then? Why did she go out to the tent or take the tent peg out of the ground and use a tent peg? That seems a bit of a clumsy, inconvenient way of killing him. Says the Medrash, why did she not use a klizayin, the sword of Sisera? Says the Medrash, because she was worried that maybe this is a problem of beged ish, that a woman shouldn't wear men's clothes. Maybe this is considered not just clothes, but a sword is considered men's apparatus. She didn't want to take it. Really? That seems a little bit strange, a little bit extreme. Why didn't she use the sword? If she would have called any Rav, if she would have had Shaila text and said, I'm in the tent now with Sisera, yeah? Can I take his sword and kill him, yes or no? I don't know for certain, but I would imagine 99.9% of the respondents on Shaila text would say, kill the guy. However, which way, just use his sword, kill him. What about pikuach nefesh? There's lots of heterim you can come up with. But yet, Yael was concerned about it. She took the tent peg and killed him. What's the message? The message is that the real barometer of a person is how they behave under duress. And if they're still mindful of halacha in very pressurized, difficult situations, that speaks volumes about who they are. So Yael, despite being in a very pressurized situation, the arch enemy of Klal Yisrael is in her tent. She has an opportunity to kill him. And what's going through her mind? Do you think using the sword is kliisha? Is begadish? And therefore she errs on the side of caution. She takes the tent peg and kills him with that. A fascinating concept. The real barometer of who the person is how are they mindful of halacha even under very pressurized situations, even under duress. Astonishing. So there we have 3 ideas in this week's Parsha. Number 1 is the value of human life. Why is it that our Parsha begins, a continuation of the theme of war, the end of last week's Parsha, but slipped in the middle is Egla Rufa. What's that got to do with anything? Why is it that the 4 exceptions, those 3, seemingly strange exceptions, planting a vineyard seems a bit strange, and third of all, why make them come and then go back? The Teretz says the whole point is to try and help us focus on the value of human life. And therefore we have Egla Rufa, which even this unidentified corpse we're going to take care of because one loss is tragic. And we therefore bring them there to the battleground to send them home again. The message is not for them, it's for the people who stay behind. This is the value of human life. We're focusing on building and not destroying. This is really what's important. Go home, build your homes, build your vineyards. Then we discussed the Ben Sura and Moreh, what is the difference between him and Yishmael. So we saw the Marsha. The Marsha says because the Ben Sura and Moreh, it's him, it's his future. As opposed to Yishmael, it's not him, it's his generations, it's his future descendants. That's the Marsha's answer. But the Yisrael Salanta talks about the Ben Sura Moreh, his current life setup is problematic. That's the issue. And then finally, this concept of Yael, that how she lives according to halacha, even under duress, even under pressure, that's the real barometer of an Eishes Chayil. Okay, thank you for joining us. Be well.